I have had an interest in knights from two main sources. As a child I became interested in fantasy stories. It began with a friend who introduced me to Dungeons and Dragons. The original red box was a reasonably simple set of rules but led to a cracking game. That connected to searching out fantasy fiction, and as a child in the 1980s there was an explosion of fantasy novels. A lot of it was downright terrible, but there was some excellent stuff as well. The second big influence was the movie Excalibur. It was grand and epic and filled with huge characters and fantastic armour and a focus on what chivalry meant. The knighting of Arthur is perhaps the most romantic depiction of chivalry in film, and Excalibur is well worth a look. These were all fantasy or romantic versions of knights, and I was interested in the real men who wore the code. There are hundreds of books on knights, and some surprisingly good ones like the Eyewitness Kids series. Yet one book kept coming up, Chivalry by Maurice Keen. I was able to get the excellent Folio Society edition and have spent the last month working through this epic volume. This volume differs from nearly every book on knights that I have seen. It touches only cosmetically upon the weapons, armour, and campaigns of the knights. Its focus isn't upon the wars they fought, bloody and unjust many if not all of them proved to be, but rather, as the title suggests, on chivalry. What did it mean to be a knight? It ends up being a much more difficult and vastly complicated question. It deals with many of the important facets of knighthood, the church wanting control over a militant force which would do its bidding, the kings who eventually resisted the church and wanted control over their own forces, and the question of nobility as both a bloodline, which becomes even more complicated, and the meaning through deed of nobility. How one becomes a knight, the rituals and eligibility, the debates over the robber barons or those who qualify to be knighted through deeds on the field of battle, and the ranking systems to not allow them to be the same level as those of noble birth, the tournaments as a dangerous arena often used to prepare men for war, through to the later years where its sports-like elements were criticised by many. The various attitudes covering knights becoming less the warrior and more a celebrity of their day, vain and shallow. This book is a work of art. It is deep and captivating, but both the narrative and the subject matter are at times heavy-going. This isn't a book for a passing interest. It's a scholar's book with a central idea that demands you to keep up. If you have a strong interest in chivalry, then this is the book you should have on your shelf. I cannot recommend this enough.